And welcome back to Attorneys on Call. If you have suffered an injury due to a dangerous medical device, the Whitley Law Firm can help you. We encourage you to call the 800 number or go to whitleylawfirm.com. You've probably heard us before talking about this on the program. We refer to these as mass torts. Ben and Whitney, give us an explanation. What really is a mass tort?
So when you think about a tort, right, it means harm. So a mass tort is going to be mass harm. People call me all the time and they'll say, you know, I have a hip replacement claim. Am I going to be a part of a class action? And if you're dealing with a mass tort, the short answer is no. They look similar, mass torts and class actions, but they're very different. So a mass tort, you're going to have let's say 100 individual plaintiffs against one common defendant.
Okay.
So they're oftentimes filed as 100 separate lawsuits, but what happens is they're consolidated in front of one, oftentimes federal court judge somewhere in the United States, so that he or she can make consistent pretrial rulings. They can oversee discovery, deposition, sort of the things that make up general causation or will apply to every case. And then you kind of go from there. A class action, you've got a bunch of plaintiffs who are consolidated in one action, and then one of the plaintiffs is basically the class representative,
okay.
And he or she can make decisions that bind all the other class members. So one defendant, a lot of plaintiffs, but the plaintiffs can be bound by that class representative, whereas in a mass tort, it's many different individual lawsuits, so each person who's injured maintains control over his or her case after it's filed, and then the process it goes through. But it's just a little more efficient than filing 100 different lawsuits all across the country and having to wage the same battles.
So those 100 people, like if I'm part of that, I've got my own attorney. Joe has his own attorney, right? And we're individually represented.
Sure, you're individually represented, but to sort of consolidate resources, the nature of a mass tort is often placed into an MDL, and that stands for multi-district litigation. So the multi-district litigation is the federal court that's overseeing all of the 100 or 1,000 individual mass tort cases. So overall, you're going to have several attorneys who are kind of leading the charge more so than others, just because there's no need to recreate the wheel 100 times over with each individual case. You may have them being individually represented, the plaintiffs, that is, but you know, there's a structure to try to consolidate resources and really consolidate efforts so that it's a joint fight against these big multi-million and billion-dollar corporations.
Speaking of a joint fight, what we're talking about is the hip joint, right? And what's going on there. Tell us about this latest case, or I haven't heard about it before. We were talking off camera. It involves Smith Nephew, which is a medical device company, right? And kind of give us the 411 on this.
So we've talked before, Drew, about metal-on-metal total hip replacement claims. So that's what happens after a serious car accident, for example, if someone has a hip injury or just general wear and tear as a person ages. They'll go in and they'll do a total hip replacement, and they will replace the femoral stem and then the cup, basically, so you've got two metal-on-metal components rubbing against each other. And everyone's seen the news and the lawsuits. These have been going on for 5+ years and involve the DePuy ASR, which was recalled, Biomet, Stryker had some components, and those were all total hip replacement cases. What we're looking into right now is something called a hip resurfacing. So it's marketed to patients who are perhaps younger and more active as being less invasive than a total hip replacement because you don't replace the femoral stem. You cap it or you resurface it with a metal component. So it's still the same metal parts rubbing against each other, but it's not a totally replaced femoral stem like you see with a total hip replacement. Unfortunately for these folks, even though they were told, you know, it's not going to be as invasive and you should have quicker recovery and you can still be active, we're seeing the same issues, which include metal ion damage, extremely elevated cobalt and chromium levels, and ultimately then a revision surgery, which is always worse than the initial implant, whether it's a resurfacing or a total hip replacement. So that's really what we're looking into now.
If someone had one of these, would they know immediately, or would they have to call their doctor and say, what actually which part was placed into my hip?
Yeah, so oftentimes they have to call their doctor, but if you've had to go back and have a second surgery, or if you've had to have a revision surgery, you know what the hip was that was used the first time that failed. But it's something you can call your surgeon and find out, and then ultimately we are able to order the product sticker. So the medical device company has the packaging, they've got the hip components, there's actually a sticker on the product that when it's placed in the patient's body during surgery, take the sticker off the packaging and put it in your medical records.
Oh, wow,
so then
okay.
we're able to confirm exactly what type it was, the lot number, all that information.
So the issue here is that what plaintiffs are saying is that the medical device company knew that there was going to be a problem, yet it wasn't disclosed?
Right, so there's two theories. The reason that these resurfacing cases and the Birmingham resurfacing are just starting to be looked at now is because of the way they were approved. So Smith Nephew got these products approved back in 2006 through what's called the pre-market approval process.
And that's through the FDA?
That's through the FDA, but it's different than the way that the vast majority of other types of medical device and drugs are approved, which is the 510K process. Essentially, products that are approved through the PMA, pre-market approval, are preempted. So that's a huge hurdle you have to overcome just whether you can have your day in court.
Okay.
So after the FDA approved this product in 2006, we believe there's evidence that Smith & Nephew knew way back then that the products were faulty and were causing issues. There have been studies in Australia, in England, where the failure rates were extremely high for women. And then where men, the cup size was smaller than usual, the failure heights were approaching the total hip replacement cases that we've seen the big settlements and the big verdicts come out for over the past couple of years.
So it sounds like the people who are undergoing this are in a lot of pain, I would imagine.
Right, and what's really frustrating for me is a couple of my clients are relatively young females. One was in a really bad car accident. One just kind of happened to have more wear and tear than should have her age, and they were in their early 40s, and they had this resurfacing, promised they were going to be able to get back on the tennis court, promised they were going to be able to run. They actually, one of the spokespeople for this product was a marathon runner, and that's sending a false message when that's not the reality that the patients are faced with. When you have to have your hip revised after 3, 4, 5 years, and it's supposed to last for 10, 15, 20 years, that's a really hard, painful, and difficult surgery to come back from.
Ben, people that are faced with this type of situation, what can they do?
Sure. So, first of all, how do you know you have a case? Well, you're going to know you have a case because you've had to have a revision,
Okay.
or you've had complications, or you've gone back into your doctor. So, if you're out there and you're confused, do I have a mass tort? Well, the first thing to think, are you going back to your doctor for problems with a hip implant, with anything that's been an orthopedic device? Call us. Let's just check it out and talk. Go to our website. We've listed all the different manufacturers and all the types of claims that we're having. So first thing just to kind of think about if you're out there listening to this, I mean, a lot of it's scary because you've gone through a surgery. If you've had a surgery to implant or deal with a medical device and you're having problems with that device and you're going back to your doctor and it's not working like it's supposed to, just call us. Let's see if it's part of one of these cases. And I think that's the most important thing to do. It's a free call.
It's a free call.
It's a free consultation.
Whitney, the clients that you have, you said these two young women. I mean, this is probably life-altering for them, right? So, it's a serious situation.
Right. So, I mean, if you think about a hip replacement, you're going in and removing the hip joint and replacing it with metal-on-metal components. So the promise was it was going to be better articulation. It was going to be a better quality of life. And what they found is debilitating pain, cobalt and chromium levels that are, I mean, you're supposed to have a very low amount, and these folks are having 20 and 30 parts per billion. It's supposed to be less than 0.1 in the human body.
So that's in their bloodstream, right?
That's right.
And so that's metal toxicity.
That's right, and it's causing an inflammatory response in the joint that's really very painful. And I don't want to overlook what they have to go through before it's revised. Then you undergo a revision surgery. One of my clients, for example, the revision has been so difficult, she had to move to a one-story home because she can't go up and down the stairs. Yeah, and she's had one resurfacing that was supposed to get her back. This is 5 years after the very first surgery, and she's still having to move around on a one-story home because she just can't ambulate like it was promised to her.
And Ben, we're not talking about the physicians here, the surgeons. It's not them. It's strictly the pharmaceutical or the medical device company.
Yeah, I mean, this is, people worry about frivolous lawsuits. This is not a frivolous lawsuit. This is not a lawsuit against your doctor. This is a lawsuit against the people who the manufacturers. And Whitney has been very much involved with, she's flying all over the country, meeting with all the other lawyers in the country that are handling these cases, because what we want to do is we want to bring a team for our Whitley Law Firm clients, our North Carolina clients, that has the backing of kind of all the national folks that are going to help, and Whitney's right there in the middle of it at the forefront. So we've got a real advantage as part of the Whitley advantage. Is we're going to be able to help folks that have this issue. So if we encourage you, if you think that this has happened to you, is to call us.
You're spending a lot of time, as Ben said, traveling, but it's got to be worth it because you're gaining so much knowledge, I would guess.
Absolutely, so much knowledge about what types of cases are out there. I mean, I'm able to talk to somebody relatively quickly, and if they can let me know what type of orthopedic device they have, I can figure out whether or not it's something we're looking at, something we can look at, or something we can help with. And so it's really important to be well versed in the different types of medical devices, how they're approved, what you're up against, and then what the other lawyers are doing across the country, because it doesn't make sense to take these on independently. We need to pool our resources and have a collective fight to really go up against the big companies.
It's been a fascinating topic today. Thank you so much for sharing this with us, and thank you for joining us for this edition of Attorneys on Call. Go to the website, call the 800 number at your leisure. One of the attorneys will be getting back to you, and as Whitney and Ben both said, any question, any first call, it's totally free. You don't have to pay anything for it, but pick up the phone and give them a call. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next time right here for Attorneys on Call.